Welcome to the first Future Latiné Educator webinar with Teach. If you are here, it means you are a teacher, you love teachers, or you recognize the value and importance of teachers in your community. You may be a student wondering about the teaching profession. You may be an educator tapping into some inspiration. You may be simply curious about how to encourage more people into what is surely the profession that most shapes the future, teaching. My name is Rachel, and I am lucky to represent Teach. With us today, we have an incredible group of inspiring Latino and Latina educators from across the nation who I have the privilege of introducing in a moment. Here's our agenda for today. Again, before we introduce our speakers, I have to introduce our organization, teach.org. We are a free one-stop shop for anyone interested in becoming a licensed educator. Our team at Teach can support anyone, no matter their background, whether you're a high school student considering the classroom, a college student yet to decide your major, or a career changer interested in a new path. We're here to help. Teach has current classroom educators who are serving as licensure coaches. So, aspiring educators, or just anybody who's curious about the profession, you can sign up for a one-on-one session to determine the next step to getting your teaching license based on your unique background. Teach partners with school districts and teacher preparation programs across the nation, as well as with organizations that explicitly serve communities of color. Teach is really focusing on working with community groups in Colorado, Texas, North and South Carolina, and Connecticut to try to encourage as many people as possible to enter this profession through which they can have such a profound impact on their local community. We'll share a link at the end of this presentation so you can gain access to all of these free resources and tools, plus financial support on your journey to becoming a teacher. Before I introduce our MC for this evening, let me share why Latiné teachers matter. Research tells us that the quality of a child's teacher is absolutely crucial. That's why we need more great teachers in the classroom. We also know that having a Latiné teacher benefits all children, and particularly children of color. According to Latinos for Education, school districts across the country must do more to hire Latiné teachers. The disparity between Latiné students and Latiné teachers is significant, considering that 27% of students nationally are Latiné, but only 9% of educators are Latiné. Big gap there. This study adds to the growing body of research that shows the positive impact and outcomes that result when we have more Latiné teachers in the classroom. Not only are Latiné students able to thrive and stay connected to their education, but all students benefit. In the room with us today, we have aspiring educators, current educators, education leaders, and rockstar students of all identities, the Latiné community members and their allies alike. And with that, I'm honored to announce our MC for the day, Mr. Gerardo Munoz. He is a scholar, a poet, a writer, an educator, and the 2021 Colorado Teacher of the Year. Mr. Munoz manages all programs for aspiring and new teachers at Denver Public Schools, and a doctoral student at the University of Denver in the College of Education. Mr. Munoz taught social studies for 23 years and served as the student voice lead at Denver Center for International Studies at Baker. He welcomes full community participation in his classroom, a tireless champion of anti-oppression awareness and training. He is a recipient of many awards, including, are you ready for all of these awards? Are you ready? A 2021 CEA Golden Apple Award, the California Casualty Excellence in Teaching Award, the 2021 No Justice, No Peace Malcolm X Award, the Rogan Family and Jared Paulus Foundation Teacher Recognition Award in 2006, the University of Denver Summit Award in 2009, and the Denver Public Schools Mile High Teacher Award in 2012. Mr. Munoz is the co-host of the Two Dope Teachers podcast, which we encourage you to check out on Apple and Spotify. He is also our host tonight, and we're immensely grateful for his passion, dedication, and his time, because it seems like he's, pretty widespread, and leadership today and all the days. Mr. Munoz is going to introduce our panelists and kick off tonight's events. Thank you, Mr. Munoz.
going on, everybody? This is super exciting as I'm seeing people checking in from all over the world. That's a beautiful thing. The one award I forgot to tell you all about is probably the most important one, the Denver Nuggets Most Valuable Teacher Award for December of 2020. Rocky came to my house. It was amazing. But yeah, it really is an honor to be here. And also to be facilitating this conversation with some just incredible educators, some whom I know and some that I'm just meeting for the first time, all totally inspirational. I want to begin with a land acknowledgement, and this is, I think, in particular relevance to me because like many of you who are attending this event, I consider myself to be a descendant of the original people of the Americas. My grandmother on my father's side was a full-blood Zapotec Indian. My grandfather was a Yaqui from the Mexican state of Sonora. And so when we talk about land acknowledgements, we are also talking about our gente and our heritage. It matters because I think a lot of us have found ourselves alienated from those indigenous roots and from the great societies that were there. Matters because where I sit right now used to be inhabited by other people, and it is no longer inhabited by those other people. And so I'll share with you a land acknowledgement that comes from Colorado. If someone is aware, there is a website, nativeland.io, I believe is the site. You can go there and put in your zip code or geographic coordinates, and it'll tell you whose land you're on originally. Um, I come to you in a good way, in the spirit of the ancestors upon whose shoulders I stand. I speak to you on the traditional lands of the Cheyenne, Arapaho, Ute, Kiowa, Shoshone, Lakota, and Oseti Sakoin, for whom this land was home, where they hunted, fished, told stories, passed on their traditions, and built communities. I am, and you are, on native lands always. And as we share stories and perspectives, know that in our comunidades, this is the stories and the heritage and the people who elevate us to the promised land, so to speak. Are We're doing that just as our ancestors did. So so before I introduce this brilliant panel, I just would love to know who's in the room right now. In the chat, if you or in the Q&A, I guess I don't know if the chat's working. If you could share a little bit of who you are, your name, your role, your location, and if you feel like sharing what drew you into this webinar this evening or afternoon or morning. I know a lot of folks who are there. Okay, so the chat is working. I'm being told you may only be able to send to us panelists. So absolutely. So send us a little shout from where you are, and I'll say who's here. Up to 90 people in attendance. That is amazing, and I am loving this. All right, shout out to the Philippines. It's morning in the Philippines. I love that. That's amazing. We have Honduras in the house, by way of Raleigh, North Carolina. We have let's see, we have some other places. That's amazing. We've got Ecuador. Yes, indeed. And you're in Denver. I love this. So this is amazing because we have geographic regions that are represented as homelands, as well as where we are today. We've got Honduras, Dallas, Texas. That's right, Dr. Hernandez. We've got Colombia in Denver. We've got Gabriela and Greeley. You're really close, and preschool. I love it. Janet from Mexico in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Puerto Rico. Had the chance to be in Puerto Rico. Yeah, I see La Doctora Torres Hill over here celebrating Puerto Rico. Went for the first time about a year ago. We've got our Ghanaian family member, West Africa, mathematics, Nicaragua. Man, this is amazing. Thank you so much for just sharing your locations. It's interesting because, my mother taught internationally. She taught in Spain for a year. and she was invited to a happy hour on one Friday. And she's really nervous. She'd only been there a few days, and she was thinking to herself, "Man, how am I gonna find people? Like, am I gonna know where to sit? I don't know any of these folks." And she walks into the establishment, and she was able to pick out the educators immediately. We're kind of the same everywhere, regardless of our cultural differences. So I'm going to go ahead and do some introductions. We're going to start with Vanessa Garcia. Wave to the people, Vanessa. All right, there she is. So, Vanessa Garcia graduated from UNC Wilmington with a degree in elementary education, K through 6, and has been a sixth grade teacher in the Clinton City School District since 2015. She's in her second year as a county coordinator for the Juntos program, which focuses on supporting Latinx students from grades 8 to 12 to ensure high school graduation and explore post secondary options. As an educator, Vanessa strives to support students in their academics by helping them reach their potential and attain their academic goals. Motivating students to grow in their academics has pushed Vanessa to work on her own potential. She has been involved with, in groups such as the Rural Teacher Leader Network and Latinx Ed. This has allowed her to learn and expand her leadership skills so she can better serve her students and community. Sounds like Vanessa lifts as she climbs. Next on the panel, we have Dr. Macario Hernandez, who joined UNT Dallas in 2022 as the university's first chief of staff. He holds a BA from the University of North Texas, an MA from Texas Women's University, and a PhD from the University of Texas at Austin. Heard of that establishment. Dr. Hernandez served as a bilingual teacher, school administrator, and community leader for more than 25 years in Dallas, with the majority of his tenure spent in his hometown neighborhood of Oak Cliff. Under his leadership, Trini Garza Early College High School was recognized by the National Title I Distinguished School Award in 2018 and received the 2021 National Blue Ribbon Award by the United States Department of Education. The high school continuously earned all 7 distinctions from the Texas Education Agency for outstanding educational performance every year of his tenure. Hernandez credits these accomplishments to a bottom-up approach that involves stakeholders in the decision-making process through authentic relationship-building meetings. In 2019, Dr. Hernandez received the Distinguished Alumni Award from Mountain View College in recognition for his commitment to the school community. Dr. Hernandez serves as a public education advocate, a board member of the National Latina Education Research Policy Project, and past local president of the League of United Latin American Citizens, LULAC 272. As principal at Trinidad Garza Early College High School, Hernandez partnered with UNT Dallas and 826 Dallas Project, a chapter of 826 National, to publish a book, Faceless: Untold Side Effects of Culture, Race, and COVID-19, which is a collection of anecdotal stories and poems that shed a light on the lived experiences many urban youths endured during this global pandemic. Dr. Hernandez, just thank you for being here with us this evening. Next on the panel is my good friend, Autumn Rivera, who is a sixth grade teacher at Glenwood Springs Middle School in the Roaring Fork School District in Colorado. She is also an adjunct professor at Colorado Mountain College in the education department. Also related to that, is your banner still up in the airport? Like you can actually go and get a selfie with Autumn. It's very cool. Um, During her more than 18 years as an educator, she has worked with students from elementary to postgraduate. Rivera focuses on empowering her students and strives to provide them with common background experiences. She was named the 2022 Colorado Teacher of the Year and a finalist for National Teacher of the Year. She is also a winner a Golden Apple in Excellence in Teaching Awardee and PAEMST. Autumn, it's so good to see you. This brings us to Daisy Torres. Daisy Torres is currently acting assistant superintendent of professional learning and multilingual learners for Hartford Public Schools. In this role, she oversees the district's professional learning programs and leads program development in one of the largest school districts in Connecticut. Under the leadership of Dr. Torres and her team, over 500 students in Hartford have been awarded the Seal of Biliteracy. She is also leading efforts in the recruitment and retention of 16 teachers from Puerto Rico as part of an innovative Paso a Paso program and 4 international teachers under a teacher exchange program to diversify talent. She is a bilingual English and Spanish educator with over 20 years of urban school experience at the elementary, middle, and high school levels. In December 2019, Dr. Torres published her first bilingual Spanish and English children's book with 1010 Publishing entitled I'll See You on the Bridge, a heartfelt story about a young boy, the beautiful relationship with his dog, and pet loss. Dr. Torres was awarded the Outstanding Educator Leadership Award with the Connecticut Association of Latino Administrators and Superintendents, CALAS, in 2018, and was the 2022 Curriculum Associates ALAS $10,000 scholarship recipient that will be used to complete her doctoral studies. From Southern Connecticut State University, she earned her Master of Arts degree in TESOL, Multicultural and Bilingual Education, her Bachelor of Science degree in Elementary and Education, and her Bachelor of Arts degree in Spanish. She earned a 6-year professional diploma in educational leadership and is currently pursuing her doctorate of education at the University of Connecticut with a focus on the lack of Latina women in executive leadership roles in K through 12 education. Well, good news, Daisy. I think I just gave you your doctorate by calling you doctora. We're going to go ahead and manifest that. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Gerardo Munoz. My pronouns are he, him, él. 2021 Colorado Teacher of the Year. Currently, I am Manager of Learning and Development at Denver Public Schools. My work is to support aspiring and new teachers and educators in our amazing district. So this is your panel. This is what it do. This is what we're going to be doing. So few housekeeping items. Rachel, do you want to take it away on the housekeeping items?
Sure. Just a quick recap, everybody, on the housekeeping items. Quick reminders. Feel free to share your thoughts in the chat, and we are monitoring the Q&A as we are going. And yeah, that's pretty much it. We will be here answering the Q&A on the backside as the panelists are going through their questions. Thank you all.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, first I want to welcome our panel. Hopefully my nerves aren't showing too much because y'all are pretty impressive. I actually kind of want to start with something a little bit lighthearted. I would like each person on the panel to just take a minute or two, introduce yourself, your name, your role, but most importantly, I want to know what kind of student you were. So now you can kind of pick this from any sort of moment in your education. That can be as a 4-year-old ECE student. It can be as a graduate student. Like I'm going to leave that wide open, and I'll give you an example. So I'm Gerardo Munoz. I work in Denver Public Schools. I'm born and raised in Denver. I've spent almost 40 of my 47 years on Earth in Denver Public Schools. And so here's what I'll share with you. When I think of myself as a student, I think of myself as a 7th grader when I was 12. And I was possibly the most annoying child that existed at Cole Middle School. If there was a bad idea to gain attention, I was going to do it. I loved making people laugh. I loved getting people's attention. But underneath all that was an insecurity that all I was good for was making people laugh. And so when I think about my teaching career, which is now over, I'm no longer a classroom teacher. I think a lot about that 12-year-old kid and what he needed and how I can use that to serve others and serve students. Who would like to tell us about themselves when they were a school-age person?
I can go ahead.
Awesome, Autumn.
Hi, friend.
That rhymes, actually. It's actually they rhyme.
So
It's no coincidence.
I'm also going to go to middle school. I was a very awkward elementary middle school. I was really into homemade vests. There was a homemade vest time. And I was very shy, very, very, very shy. The fact that I'm giving keynotes in front of thousands of people is just like my 7th-grade-year-old self would never ever have believed that. And so really just that student that was very shy and slowly just through sort of safe risk taking, slowly became bigger crowd I'm talking to, a bigger crowd I'm talking to until here we are. So thanks.
Here we are. Thank you, Autumn. So just remember, as you maybe have that little girl in middle school who's a little awkward and a little shy, you may have a national finalist for National Teacher of the Year in your classroom. You never know. Who's next?
Hey,
I can
I'll
go.
go.
Sorry.
Oh,
I'll stop.
This always
Everybody
happens. This always happens.
Dr. Hill.
I love, first of all, I just want to say thank you for manifesting the doctora
Yes.
in the air
Yep.
because
She's going to be doctora. That's what we're going to call
Yes.
you from now on.
So thank you for that. Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be here. Feel honored. Thank you, Teach. Thank you, Mr. Munoz, for the warm welcome and the introduction. Daisy Torres Hill, and I've been an educator now for 22 years. Time has flown. I love what I do. But when I think about myself as a young girl, I would have to agree with Autumn. I was a very shy young lady, but I loved, and I knew from back then that I loved to read. I was a reader, and I always knew one day I wanted to write a book, and I'm just so proud that I was able to do that. That's something that was always going to stay with me, but very shy. And I think I got lost in my books, the adventures and the journeys, just thinking about some of my early childhood experiences, but love literacy. Thank you.
Thank you, doctora. We're going to keep this up. Awesome. Doctor.
Oh, yes, thank you. Well, real similar, I guess, again, I've been in education, I guess now about 25 years, but all the way from, I guess, a bilingual teacher all the way to a high school principal. And I left that world a year ago. Right now I'm in the university world. They told me it's going to slow down over here, but it looks like you have to be a professor for that. But I'll tell you, I guess as a child, it's gonna be opposite of Dr. Torres Hill, because I had challenges reading. I didn't learn to read until I was like 5th and 6th grade. I was that kid that my best friend would sit behind me to whisper the words to me, so it wasn't so bad. So you can imagine the insecurities. I was a chubby kid. I dealt with bullying, so that was a kid. But when I got to high school, I was like Gerardo, man. I was like a joker. I challenged the teachers quite a bit about history and stuff of that nature. So I was a kid that really got, I like to challenge, especially the history teachers when they would talk about Columbus and stuff like that. But I was a little bit of a clown too. And it was kind of part of that insecurity of trying to avoid certain things. But look, I tell the people all the time, if someone like me who learned to read in 5th and 6th grade can get a PhD, then those kids that are that age, they can easily surpass anything that I've done in my life.
100%, doctor. And it sounds like you and I would have been friends and gotten in trouble a lot together. And I will also name that I was late diagnosed with dyslexia, which was probably a lot of why I like to keep on talking and taking the attention off of the fact that I struggle to read. All right, let's go to Vanessa Garcia.
Hi, everyone. Again, Vanessa Garcia. I'm a 6th-grade math teacher in the Clinton City School District. For me, I feel like it goes back to elementary school. I was always just that type of student. Like, I did my work, I did what I was supposed to. I was kind of like a perfectionist in a way, but then I always liked to be the teacher's pet. So I was always wanting to grade the papers and help that person out, or like if a student needed help, I was, ready to help them out. So that was just kind of, what I think about.
Love that. I love that. I feel like you would have been super annoyed by me and probably would have been telling on me and being like, do you know what Gerardo just did? He just launched a piece of wood across the room using the sander. Did not make that up. Also, I would not make up this fact, which my woodshop teacher's name was literally Mr. Carpenter. We're gonna jump in to some Q&A. And so the way we're gonna run this webinar, we've got about 32 minutes before it concludes. And so we're going to balance it a little bit. The panelists have received some questions. I won't ask all the questions because I definitely this Q&A is bumping, y'all. Like, keep it coming. So many like contributions coming here. We got people who are talking about AI in here. We got people, we got our teachers from Jamaica. We've got all this stuff that keeps on coming through. So just keep it going, and we'll definitely balance out some of our speaking and in sharing to actually receiving the questions that you get. So keep those questions coming in the chat. If we don't get to your questions, we would love to go back through them and reach out to you and provide answers to you. So the first one I kind of want to jump into, this is Brilla tu Luz, right? Shine your light. This is a Future Latiné Educator webinar. And so a little bit of what I want to start with is our identities, right? We as a Latiné community, and I've stopped saying it as a singular, we have so much internal diversity. There are so many different ways that you can identify as a Latina person. And so I'd like to start by just having each of you on the panel share a little bit about the identities that you carry with you and the identities that you bring into your work as an educator. So we know there are lots of terms that kind of go there. I personally identify as a Chicano. I didn't know what that word really meant until I had a chance to take Chicano history classes, Chicano studies as an undergraduate. My dad told me my dad was born in Mexico, in La Ciudad de Mexico, Mexico City. And his understanding was that a Chicano was just a Mexican that was born in the US. And so that kind of started me on this path of understanding who I was. And my Chicano identity, I tell people I'm just a little East Side Chicanito from Denver, Colorado. I carry that in all of my work. Who else on the panel would like to share a little bit about their identities and how they bring them into their work?
I can talk about we talk Mexican, we call it Mexican Americans or Chicano. But I think I think about, for me, it's more of a homegrown consciousness, and that's kind of the research I did around educators. And it looks like Colorado has quite a bit of that. My good friend Susana Cordova, I don't know if you know her
Hey,
well.
oh yeah,
You need to
oh
tell her
yeah.
I said hello.
I
But
will. I taught both of her kids, so
you're
we're real
kidding
tight.
me. Okay, good.
Yeah.
So she's a perfect example. We had the same thing in Dallas in a Grow Your Own in Michael Hinojosa, where these were teachers that became superintendents of their own backyard. And
Wow.
so you imagine someplace like Dallas and something like Denver, a Chicano in Dallas and a Chicana in where she came from, immigrant family, right? So I mean, these are beautiful stories. So I think identity is also not only our ethnicity, but it's also where we're from and how we bring whatever we come from. It doesn't matter where you're coming from. It's how you bring all your culture to the picture. And so
Yeah, it's place. Yeah.
that's what I'm talking about. Giving credit to lived experiences, and never, because if we just go by what we're educated on, they asked me after I got my doctorate at the defense, he goes, "What'd you get out of this program?" Well, that I still kept my identity. And some of the professors weren't happy with that, maybe one or two on my panel, but you can't erase who you are, because what we have within ourselves and our language and our culture, it's what's going to help transform our current education system. I'll stop.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's absolutely right. The identities we carry are so complex, and they're not limited to nationality or racial identity. You mentioned place. Autumn, I'm going to put you on the spot right now. Place is a part of your identity that's really important. So if you want to speak to that, but just also your identity in general.
Yeah, I really love this question. And I think it's something that I have been just processing through my Teacher of the Year of service, and then kind of past that. My family is from northern New Mexico and have lived there for as long as we can trace back. The borders have changed, and the countries have changed, but their home had not changed. My father moved up to Colorado. My grandfather moved up to Colorado, and then my father, when he went to school, was not allowed to speak Spanish in school, and so we lost that language. And so I struggle kind of figuring out where my identity is. My mother is Caucasian, and my father is Hispanic, and finding that peace and where I belong as not being a Spanish speaker, I think is something that I am just still trying to figure out, but also know that there are many like me. And so it's just sharing that story and keeping that piece out there. It's really important for me with my students. I teach at a school that's 65% Hispanic and Latinx. And so just trying to support them and be that representation for them. And I think it really helps them draw that connection to the place that we are and the part that we're a part of. I think it's really important for students to take ownership over their community and not just have it be something they're viewing from the outside, but something they're a part of just in day-to-day experiences. So yeah, excited to be here and share about those pieces. Thanks.
Thank you. And, Autumn and I have these conversations a lot about, she teaches in a smaller community. I teach in Denver, and yet the demographics of the children we serve are pretty similar. And despite all of those differences, those kinds of similarities stick with us. I want to just speak really briefly to the lost language piece. Like, I think there are a lot of Latine folks who don't understand why people like Autumn, like me, don't feel entirely comfortable with the Spanish language. And like Autumn, I have a white mother. And there are all of these kind of internal borders that we sometimes draw. And, the legacy of colonialism and conquest of our multiple languages, like going back even to our indigenous languages that we spoke before, is something that continually gets passed down. We have a couple more panelists to kind of speak to it. So either Doctora or Ms. Garcia, whoever would like to take this question next.
Sure, I'll talk briefly. So when I think about identity, I often think about my gender as a woman, right? And that I also identify as Puerto Rican, right? So my family, my parents were born in Puerto Rico, but I was born and raised in Connecticut. And so similar, Autumn, you and I just have a lot of similar stories, but similar to Autumn, in my case, my mother, born and raised in Puerto Rico, but when she came to the mainland in Connecticut as a young child, she had a really difficult time in school. Just teachers had low expectations of her, and her classmates were really not kind to her, and she really had a hard time acquiring English. She finally did. She got into middle school and high school, and she's fully bilingual today, and very proud of where she comes from. But as a result, when I was born, I think her, how she grew up and those experiences she had, she really wanted me not to have those same ones. So she raised me in an English speaking household. And I know what she was doing to protect me from her same experience, but in a way, it hurt me, right? Because I really, as I'm now an adult, realize how important it is for children to understand their language and their culture and their background and be extremely proud of that. And that's become my lifelong mission now. You mentioned it in my intro. My work is to really develop those talents and those assets in our students through the Seal of Biliteracy, so that they graduate and that they are proud, right? That they bring, more than one language when they graduate. And we want to celebrate that and honor that and help them to be successful in the world. So, yes.
I love that, Daisy. Thank you so much. My daughter graduated high school last year with the Seal of Biliteracy, and it just was so healing to my wife and me, because the way that, and my wife's a Mexican national who had essentially her language bullied out of her when she came here as a 5-year-old. It was so healing to see our daughter, a little chicanita, like celebrated for being biliterate. So it's beautiful. And shout out to Puerto Rico. Y'all keep us like just honest and real about the settler colonial reality that a lot of our communities face. Vanessa Garcia, talk to us about identity. Who are you? What do you consider yourself? All that stuff.
I consider my parents, they're from Mexico, so I do consider myself Mexican American as well. Growing up, it was really hard with my identity. I'm from a really small rural area, it's very agricultural, and where I'm also from, the southern part of the state, and growing up, I went to schools that were at times predominantly white, and it was, at times I didn't feel like I belonged. I was either too white or too Mexican in certain areas. I was called names, so it kind of just really confused me growing up, and I'm on a journey right now to kind of searching for my roots and just trying to embrace that identity. And I've gotten to do that, through fellowships, just kind of reaching out to other people. And I'm learning to embrace that, I'm Mexican, I'm American, I speak both languages. And at times I kind of mix them up. And I'm
Yeah.
like, well, my official language is Spanglish.
There you go.
That's what I speak. That's me.
Spanglés, definitely. Vanessa, thank you so much. And I love what I'm hearing from every person on this panel is that not only are you carrying yourself with this pride in who you are and where you're from and what you are made of, you are also working to ensure that kids, particularly in our communities, get what maybe we didn't get. And that journey that Vanessa you're talking about, I would say that's beautiful that you're just on the journey, but also in your work and in your day-to-day efforts, you are also taking children on that journey with you. I think that's a beautiful thing. The other thing too, and I think Autumn and Vanessa, you both kind of made reference to this idea of ni de aquí ni de allá, right? I'm not of here and I'm not of there either. Sometimes I find myself feeling like I'm suffering imposter syndrome in my own community as well as in the dominant culture, and that's a very difficult thing to kind of manage. Fortunately, the reina, the queen, Gloria Anzaldúa, teaches us about the borderlands, about the frontera that we live in, and particularly with our women identifying folks who often have to form that bridge with their back. So this is beautiful. So I kind of want to move in really quickly. And time flies. This is crazy. We can keep going for hours and hours, right? We can do that. Like people don't have anywhere to be, right? Anywhere that they okay. One question I kind of want to jump into, and we'll kind of speak briefly about this, but what was it that actually brought you into teaching? It's really interesting. So at the top of the show, Rachel shared with us some data about the sort of disproportionality between Latiné educators and Latiné students. I think the numbers were that 27% of students nationwide identify in some version of a Latiné identity, where only 9% of the educators are Latiné identifying. In Denver public schools, people are always surprised to find out we're 53% Latiné students, overwhelmingly Mexican-American students, and only 12% of our teachers identify as Latinx, Latine, Hispanic. And so there's this big question of how do we get more in the door? But the first question is, how did you step into the door? And let's actually start with El Doctor Hernandez. Talk a little bit about why it was that you chose education as your path.
For me, I actually wanted to be, at first I wanted to be the teacher that sometimes I didn't experience. And also at the same time, wanted to be the teacher that did have that experience. So you'll take high school, for example, there's only one Latino teacher, of course, a Spanish teacher, right? He
Yeah,
was
always.
amazing.
Yeah.
You know how it is. You know how that goes, right? And so imagine even the data I collected 20 years ago was only 7%. It's kind of sad to know that the new data is only showing 9%. So it's kind of heartbreaking to hear that we've only moved 2% in such a long time.
That's right.
But I would tell you that, so I was wanting to be both things. I wanted to be like Mr. Hernandez with a little bit of a twist, because, Gerardo, we're going to use our humor and how we were as students in the classroom.
That's right.
I wanted to be that teacher that kind of took it and brought kind of the hood I grew up in to the table. I wanted the kids to see themselves in me and me in them. And so just really respecting their lived experiences. So that's what motivated me to go into teaching. But I will give one example. I did work at Julie Hall I lasted like 3 months only, but one kid told me, He said, I just wanted to feel wanted. And when I kept talking to those kids that were in juvie hall, I found out that they were some of the smartest kids in the city of Dallas. But what I found out is that they talked about teachers just wanting to collect a check. They wish they had someone
Mm,
who cared in that classroom. So that's
yeah.
kind of what inspired me through their conversations with them. I transferred right into alternate certification and became a teacher. And so,
Wow.
so it was also that. But I won't get into the stories, but you can imagine, my history teacher, I did raise, he said, Columbus discovered America. I raised my hand. I said, well, that would be like me going into your house and grabbing a beer from your fridge and sitting down and watching a Cowboy game. Well,
There
I
you
got
go.
kicked out. I got kicked out of the room, and the assistant principal jumped all over me and said, you're not going to amount to anything. Well, I ran into that assistant principal 15 years later at an event for
Ah,
assistant
the
principal.
come up, the come up.
And I was near the catering table. And he said, do you remember me? I said, no, I don't remember you. You don't remember? You sure about that? And I gave him money. Oh, I do remember you. And he said, are you with he asked me if I was with the caterers. I said, no, actually, if you look at the agenda, I'm getting the assistant principal of the year award for the Latino organization that you're in. So if you stop and think about the full circle, the same assistant principal
Ah,
kicked me out for challenging the history teacher. I'm sitting there and his hands is literally shaking. He was still an assistant principal at the time, to think how everything goes full circle, right? But I
man.
do that because I wanted our students to see someone that looked like them and had their similar story.
Yeah, that's deep. I feel like I also push back against my history teachers that were telling an incomplete version of history. I don't think I did it in the articulate and intelligent way that you did it. I think maybe a lot of profanity, maybe a lot of those kinds of things. But that piece is really important. Like, how do you keep your own identity as these systems definitely have not historically wanted us to be ourselves? Let's hear some more about sort of what brought someone into teaching.
I think I came into teaching. I always knew I wanted to learn a lot about something and share it with other people. I don't think I named it teaching at the time.
Hmm.
Got to college and was like, oh, I love science, but I love spending time with people. Oh, I could put that together and be a science teacher. But I didn't have a single Latin teacher a teacher that looked like me my entire schooling career. Like, I actually don't know if I've ever had, until I got my second master's degree was the first time I had a
Wow.
teacher similar to me. And so I think that just really echoes like that representation and that important piece, and sharing our stories and helping students understand that their lives are similar to ours, and bringing that connection. I think that's really important, and sharing
Yeah.
that piece out. And Dr. Hernandez, I love that story. Thank you for sharing that story. I just am reflecting on being at a conference 2 years ago in Florida, and was all dressed up, and had multiple times people thought I worked at the hotel. And so just, I was there as an awardee, and had that same experience. And I just love that you had that. So thank you for sharing.
That's beautiful. And Autumn, one thing that I think is really meaningful, and correct me if I'm a bad friend and I don't remember this right, but you also teach around the community where you grew up. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
I think
Second
that's also,
generation. My dad and I
yes.
graduated from the same high school.
See, I think that's also really meaningful too, because even without having the representation of teachers who reflected your identity in some way, you still returned to your community and you still decided, just like Dr. Hernandez kind of decided, was to be that teacher that a lot of your students didn't have.
Yeah, I
So,
think that's exactly it. I think coming back to our communities, there's something to be said about someone who knows, who's lived that experience, and can share that out.
yeah, I love it. Thank you so much for that. I feel like all of us on this panel have had that experience of, you walk into an event and they're like, "Oh, good, you're here." There's a reason that I don't wear a black tie to black tie events, because someone is always going to ask me for a drink. Someone's always going to ask me for, where the restroom is. Could you pick up these plates and that kind of thing? And I don't know. Sometimes I just do it because it's funny. So let's also hear from Daisy or Vanessa. Like, what was it that brought you into the teaching profession?
Go ahead,
They're like,
Vanessa.
go ahead, Vanessa. I think you've gone last the last couple of, so we're gonna have you go
Yeah,
second to last. Things are changing.
yeah. For me, it's just something I've always wanted to do, really. It's just something that I've had a passion for since I was little, being that teacher's pet. I would always like to take those extra worksheets and just go home and just try to reteach whatever, was taught to me or anything. But just even throughout school as I was growing up, and again, just struggling with my identity, in a way, I did take pride every now and then. I remember in middle school, I used to try to kind of pride myself because I would notice I'm like, oh, I'm the only Mexican in this group and I'm doing great. Like I always try to take
Mm,
pride in that.
yeah.
Um, and then just in college, once I started taking my education courses and actually going out there and working in the classrooms, that passion just grew.
I love that. Love that. And there are some who were just born to be teachers. And I'll bet you used to teach your stuffed animals, like you used to like assemble them for class and be like, okay, kids.
I used
Doctora.
to have like a dry erase and chalkboard and everything.
Oh man, I love that. I love a legend. My mother says that I did something similar, but I didn't ever remember wanting to be a teacher when I was young. But go ahead, Daisy.
Thank you. Thank you. For me, it wasn't like I wanted to be a teacher when I grew up either. I knew I wanted to do something in the helping field.
Mm,
Um, I similar to the stories here, I was either one of two Latino students in my class, no teachers who represented or looked like me. And that always bothered me. I remember that, always just not feeling that same connection. It wasn't until I got to high school, though, that, something changed for me in terms of education. I actually was fortunate enough to have a Latina principal, high school principal. She is a trailblazer in our home state, Dr. Gladys Lavas, who just knows so much about bilingual education. And, back I remember thinking, I don't know if I want to do her job. Seems hard. I don't know if I want to, be a leader or a teacher, but I just, with that lack of representation for me, that was something that really stood for me, something that really just resonated. And then when shortly after high school, I became a young mom. And I remember folks
mm,
telling me, that was a time when there was just a lot of teen pregnancy in my hometown. And I remember, a couple folks just thinking I was just going to end up on welfare, or you're going to, end up in, just your life is kind of, I just got the narrative, your life is sort of over, right?
yeah.
And there was just
Or
this
at least your
fire.
life is
Yes,
predictable.
exactly.
We know how this story plays out, right?
Correct. And I always just had this thing within me where I was going to prove them wrong. I'm going to prove you wrong. You are, this is not a death sentence, right? And I am going to achieve my goal of becoming a teacher. And I did. And I kept going, right? And went into
Yeah.
leadership several years later, getting my doctorate degree shortly. That was a goal for me. And I just feel like sometimes when people try to tell you no, right, or try to close a door for you, that you just have to keep that fire in that passion within you, because you can't let people hold you back. You have to remember your why. And
Yeah.
that is always what I kept on holding on to.
Yeah.
So proud
Yeah.
to hopefully change the trajectory for others to see representation in their classrooms.
What's really interesting to me is listening to Dr. Hernandez and Doctora Daisy. Um, like seriously, why are people so often told that you're never going to amount to anything, that your path is like, don't they know like that most of the time that turns into a movie, right? And so I've just never understood that, and it's just such a powerful thing. I thank you for sharing that. And one thing that's really just getting me in my feelings and just touching me deeply right now is just how vulnerable everybody on this panel is being. Like, identity is hard to talk about, no matter how immersed in quote unquote your culture, which is never as simple as we think it is, you might be. Speaking about these difficulties is really hard. And I think for me, as a neurodivergent kid who came from a violent neighborhood, I think the only time I thought I might want to be a teacher was when I was in high school and I was like buried under homework. And I was like, psh, maybe I should just be a teacher so I don't have to do all this homework. I just assigned the homework, and wow, was I wrong about that? But I think for me, it was one of those things where I really enjoyed. I enjoyed sharing what I knew. I actually wanted to be an actor. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to go into acting, do all that kind of stuff. and I had an opportunity to step in as a long-term sub. I think Dr. Hernandez, you mentioned that you got in on an alternative license. Do I have that right? Yeah, I mean, and so many of our gente actually came in through those non-traditional means as well. And so I stepped into it. I was really bad at it. But I loved learning from the kids. I loved listening to them and just felt this is where I need to be right now. And I think that's how I stepped into it. So I'm gonna actually have us do one more question. I'm looking at the questions, the Q&As that are coming. It's pretty amazing how many of you are naming some of the barriers that are in front of you in our audience. You know, I'm seeing praxis exam. I'm seeing how do I find a way to get into a classroom in the United States? How do I find a way to build my own career so I can kind of be in here? There was one that said, I am dying to serve children and I'm not able to do that. I will tell you that each person on this panel is someone who can help direct you. And I know in my work, I work a lot with international teachers and visa holding teachers. So feel free to contact Teach for my information, and I can definitely get that to you. I'm also on the Denver Public Schools website, but every district I know of is looking for ways to bring international teachers, especially if you teach a subject that we need. I think the last thing that that we'll close with, and it's wild, time flies when you're having fun. I was going to have each of you on my podcast, and then we'll be able to like expand these stories. Autumn, this will be your like third or fourth appearance on the pod, and that would be great. Everybody wants that. I want to finish with a question of advice. So, as we have our gente in our communities who hope to become a teacher, who aspire to become a teacher, they see the barriers that are in front of them. They're battling the imposter syndrome that the profession sometimes perpetrates. I would just love to go around the horn and have each of you share one piece of advice to help folks find that success. And Doctora, could I start with you?
Sure. I think, you know, really it's important to seek out those folks like yourself, Gerardo, right? Myself in districts who are there to help and support you. I can't tell you how many times I've worked with someone who's just like, oh my goodness, thank God, right? You want to try to seek out those people. So your research there, you mentioned some certification programs, state websites, they have a lot of information around different routes, right, that you could take to acquire your certification, or, you know, just know that there's interstate agreements. There's a lot of laws now by state that allow for teachers. We're seeking, we are, it's so needed right now, this profession, and states are becoming more and more aware of that need. So they're becoming creative in terms of certification pathways. And so it's really important to understand where to go to find that information, right? And I always say, find that key person, do a little research, attend events, get out there and really try to network, because one little person or one information will open a door for you that you wouldn't be aware. And please reach out to us. There are things that we may be able to support you with. And so please, we encourage you to do that.
That's great. And I am being told by my friends at Teach, see, whenever I'm asked to speak, I'm like, how long do I have? And people will be like, oh, take the time that you need. No, I will go for hours and hours. And so shout out to my friends at Teach. We do have to bring this webinar to a close, but I think, Daisy, I think you put in the chat at one point, estamos familia, here we are, we're all here for you. The only thing I would say as a piece of advice from me is never give up and be who you are, because that's who you need to be. You are exactly who you need to be coming into these classrooms. So folks, let's give this a little bit of applause for this panel that is so brillante. Daisy Torres Hill, Vanessa Garcia, Autumn Rivera, and el doctor Macario Hernandez. I am Gerardo Munoz. Teach, thank you for making this happen. And folks, thank you for joining us in our conversation today.
Thank you, Mr. Munoz. And before everybody logs off, we do have a couple of more housekeeping things to do, but wow. Like Mr. Munoz said, thank you for facilitating, first of all, and to our panelists for sharing your leadership, your personal stories, and the brilliance that you do in the community. Like I was over here having side conversations with Elizabeth, like, wow, this is a great conversation. So I really, really appreciate y'all guys taking time out. And we're just so grateful for all the work that you do for the kids. So what we would like now to ask is attendees, thank you as well for attending, taking time out of your busy schedules, time away from families. And we really value your feedback. So here on the screen is a QR code. If you could please take this survey to help us better serve you in the future, we would greatly appreciate it. You can scan it. You can use the website that's there, the URL. And then also, if you would like for it to be translated, in the top right corner, when you scan it, it'll ask if you want English or Spanish, and you can do the drop down and select Spanish. So please take a few minutes to just complete that survey so we can, this is our first Future Latiné teacher webinar. So we're excited to have more of these, and we would like to know what the community needs and how we can better serve you guys. I'll give like 10 seconds for it to stay on the screen, and then I want to move to one more step and then we'll close.
Rachel, I moved the screen already, but the link to the survey is in the chat.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so Elizabeth has me covered. And this next item here is actually if you want information about teach.org, if you live in Colorado, Connecticut, Dallas, Houston, North Carolina, or South Carolina, we have tons of resources for you. So you can use this QR code here to sign up for access to scholarships, fee reimbursements, information on becoming a teacher, free advising in English and Spanish, and more. If you're in a different state or a different country, we'll do our best to help you and navigate your process, and we can definitely stay in touch. So I just want to leave this with you. And again, thank you for your time. Panelists, Gerardo, Teach, everybody on the call. Your light doesn't just brighten the classrooms, it illuminates futures. So just always remember that and keep that with you. Again, thank you so much for joining us this evening or morning or afternoon. We hope you have a great day. Thank you all.